Or I didn't know we were doing that now or something like that.
It's 5 o'clock.
Great.
I'll call the meeting to order. This is a Board of Selectmen, Lee, New Hampshire. It's a workshop to discuss the financial planning tool, to do some training, which will follow on over the next couple of weeks also. So at this time, I would turn it over to Mr. John Tappan, who is the guru of the financial planning tool. Mr. Tappan.
Okay. Last time I mentioned that I had figured out a way of graphically showing how some changes in timing may or may not affect the amount that you have to set aside to meet the expected expenses. And so I have a very, very short 4-slide PowerPoint that I think I can breeze through, and I think it'll answer some questions that at least I've had myself when I started moving schedules of expenditures around, and some things didn't make the change that I expected them to make. So
Can you see, or should I move over there?
I can see.
Oh, you can see it.
So this is not a well prepared speech here. I'm going to read most of it. Simplified calculation of required appropriation. And this is to see what effect expenditure timing changes have. So the example we're going to look at has some simple expenditures: $35,000 in year 4, $16,000 in year 6, $27,000 in year 7, and $9,000 in year 9. Don't need to remember those, you'll see them later. And we're going to say that this fund has a starting balance of $15,000. And the process is first to assume that there's no augmentation of the starting balance. That is, assume that you just go and make all the expenditures from that starting balance and calculate the balance as the expenditures are made, even allowing the balance to go negative. And then for each successive year, you calculate what annual appropriation would be required to restore the balance back to 0 or to whatever level is desired. And you have a chart to show graphically how that works. The x-axis on the bottom is the year, so we're looking at 10 years, and the vertical axis is the balance, the unaugmented balance. So it's what that balance would be if you were to just spend those amounts previously mentioned. And you can see that with spending those amounts, as soon as you spend the first amount, the balance goes below 0 and continues on down, getting what looks like worse and worse. So to get to that first year when the balance goes negative, it's at minus $20,000. And if we're in the simplified version, we're pretending that there's no interest earned and there's no escalation of the costs. So you need to set aside $5,000 a year to have $20,000 4 years from the start. And the next one, you'd have to set aside $6,000 a year to have $36,000 in 6 years. You'd have to set aside $9,000 a year for 7 years to have the $63,000 you need in 7 years. You'd have to set aside $8,000 a year to have the $72,000 that you need in 9 years. So you can see that it's the $9,000 per year that controls. And the mouse is sticky. Let's forget that. The $9,000 per year is the one that controls. And from that, you can see that the timing of some of these others, if there's no interest and no escalation, you can change the timing and it doesn't change the answer. So for example, the $16,000 expenditure in year 6, if that happened a year earlier, you still have to set aside $9,000 because 35 plus 16 plus 27, expending all of those still gets you down to this point, and you need the $9,000 per year to be able to bring that back to 0. So the $16,000, you could make it happen a year earlier, you could make it happen a year later, and if there's no escalation, it doesn't change your answer. Once you consider escalation, delaying that expenditure actually makes things worse, because that $16,000 in year 6 would become something larger in year 7. So if you wanted to change the timing of any of these items, this $35,000 or the $16,000, with the hopes of reducing the $9,000 per year, you would have to push these out beyond year 7, so that they would no longer be adding into this total expenditure by year 7. And I came across this when I was first working in the worksheet where there is escalation, and I was surprised that when I looked at one of these expenditures that's shown by these examples here, and I delayed it, and the amount that had to be set aside actually went up. And that was because delaying it increases the cost, and if you're not pushing it out beyond the controlling total, then you're not changing that, in this case, the $9,000 per year that you have to set aside. That's it. If there's any questions on?
John, I just want to be sure I understand what I'm
Sure,
looking at.
sure, yeah.
I'm looking at an account that starts at $15,000 and we add $5,000 a year to bring it to 35. Is that right?
No, we're looking at, in year 4, an expenditure of $35,000.
Okay.
And that brings the 15 down to minus 20.
Okay, but it didn't start at 35,000. We added to it and it got.
No, it started at 15,000.
Right.
This is the graphically showing how the calculation is done. This isn't actually showing what your balance in the bank would be, because you're not going to go negative.
Okay.
But this is showing just how the calculation is done.
Okay.
Where you kind of make this assumption, what if we didn't put any money in and we just spent everything we planned to spend, and that balance went negative? For each of those years where that balance is negative, how much would we have to set aside to bring that back to 0?
Mm-hmm.
And then here it's a 10-year plan, but in our real financial planning tool, it's a 20-year plan. So you're initially doing that for the next 20 years, and you look to see which one requires the greatest annual expenditure at the outset. And that's the one that controls. And you can see in this example where it's $9,000 per year, you would have to set aside $9,000 per year for 7 years. And then it would change. In the spreadsheet, this calculation is done 20 times because it's a 20-year plan. So it's done for year 1, looking ahead for all 20 years. And then it's done again starting the next year and looking ahead for 19 years. And then it's done again starting in the second year, looking ahead for 18 years, and so forth. So, because in this case, $9,000 a year is a pretty small number, but we've got other funds where this is quite a big number. And the point is, if you're trying to make changes by changing the timing, in some cases, small changes either won't have the effect you want, or they'll actually make things worse, because the annual cost escalation is just adding that total. And we can, when I go to the financial planning tool, to the spreadsheet, we can just do an example of this where we just change the timing of something and see what effect it has. Anything else? Okay. So we're on revision 5. There was updates to town buildings, to highway equipment, to transfer station. And I've also added a disclaimer on every fund page stating that it's not a plan. The idea, the purpose here is this financial planning tool does not actually represent a plan until you put all the data in, and then you've decided on what are you actually going to do. Because right now the amounts and the dates and the line items that are in there are just the data that you're collecting, and it doesn't become a actual plan until you make the decisions about those. So I had this big red, data collection only, not a plan, data collection only, not a plan. And if you were to print the spreadsheet, that shows up as a header and footer also. So that's the revisions. Down here it shows those revision dates being today. And let's see. So I think with Steve we're going to be talking about, well, you tell me, but we got town buildings, highway equipment, road and bridges, and transfer station.
I think we did the road and bridge one last time already, didn't we? Come to a consensus on that one.
Yeah, I don't think there wasn't anything
Yeah.
new there. Okay, so,
I just, like the town buildings, I added the stairs outside the old town hall, because those are pretty rotten, and those are gonna need to be replaced. We're gonna have to add,
we added that.
because I never even thought about it until today when it broke, and now we have to have a service call to have them come fix it, but at some point, we're gonna have to worry about replacing key components of the elevator in this building. That's not on the list. So I'll get actual numbers for stuff like that on Friday, but that's just not anything that's on here at all, and I'm assuming that that's not gonna be cheap for the elevator. And like, the problem is now the door's sticking, it's not like it's a major problem, but it'll like stick open downstairs, and when you go to call it upstairs, the door won't shut, so the elevator won't come up, so.
Did pass
So-
its most recent inspection.
It did, and this is just, this has recently come up, and like, did it for a little while, then came out of it, and now it's doing it again, and not really coming out of it, so we're just getting it fixed.
Isn't it like a car where it's gonna wear over
So-
time?
Yeah, that's a question, is that a capital expense?
Or maintenance, you mean?
Correct. So if it was, you could do a motor replacement and it uses less electricity, and so we're gonna save money, well, that is a capital expense. You do a big upgrade, you've improved the capital equipment, capital expense. Any piece of equipment, like, you know, a plow truck or fire truck, whatever, you expect that the mechanic's gonna have to work on it occasionally and charge you money for it. And that's, in most cases, that's not something that would be considered a capital expense.
What about the stairs though? Like those are used and then you're just replacing them, which is also, you're
Well,
not improving anything.
The way we have generally looked at it, the trustees of trust funds have looked at it, is that a replacement of a full system was a capital expense. So re-roofing a building was considered a capital expense.
But if you just did a few shingles, it'd be maintenance?
Correct. If a tree branch falls on it and you gotta replace some shingles, that's a repair.
So replacing the elevator altogether is a different thing.
Oh, if you're replacing the elevator altogether, or I think there could be pieces of it where you might say this is a capital expense because it's such a major part of it. And you can point to, like replacing a furnace. Replace a furnace or a boiler. The new furnace and new boiler has a life expectancy of 15 or 25 years, whatever it is. Seems like most every time you replace them, they're more efficient than the previous version. And that's considered a capital expense. But then you gotta do maintenance on it every year, you gotta do, and that's not. So,
Thanks for
So,
helping.
so, I'm just sitting here looking at it, and if I'm looking at the non-plan, when, for instance, does this plan, non-plan, plan, get us fully compliant with the Disability Act?
Working on it,
Huh?
working on it.
Okay. I'm just trying to understand, when is the plan, when does it become a plan, as opposed to, no, it's not, it's not finished yet, so,
it,
and that's when the numbers,
the reason I put this in is it came up last time, some questions about, so what if someone wants to look at this? This right now says that this calculated deposit for the coming fiscal year is more than $500,000 just to town buildings. And it says that the total for all the funds is 1.1 million. Well,
yes, but it's not complete yet.
correct. So that's why it has this disclaimer that this is not yet a plan.
How do you turn it into a plan? At what point do you say it's done?
That's
The
what we're
point at which the select board
Yeah.
decides, this is the plan, this is what we're gonna do.
Yeah.
So
That's what we're working on.
that's what you're working on, and when the select board has said, yes, this is what we're gonna do, all these pieces, fire equipment and ponds and cisterns and everything in there, is what we're gonna do, and we've looked at this one that says 500, whatever number it says at that time, and decided, yes, we're gonna do that, or we're gonna override it.
I understand that we're the ones that are gonna say, yes, this is what we're gonna do. I'm trying to know when it's complete.
When I stop
That
adding.
when everybody stops,
Well-
when everybody stops giving any inputs and so on, then I guess that's where you are. huh?
And we've decided what we're gonna spend money on and what we're not gonna spend money on. Right now, everything's in there, and that doesn't mean every single one of those things
Well,
is
you
going
do
to
that as you
be.
go along, or
Right.
you do it.
Well, I think to make it a plan, we have to do it at some point, and then after that, as you
I
go along, you
agree,
keep going.
at some
So-
point, we do need to do this.
So at some point, when you say, yes, this is a plan
Mhm.
that we're going to do, everybody knows this is not the exact thing that you're gonna do for the next 20 years.
Right.
That this is going to be updated, but that at this point, looking ahead, this looks like a plan that we can do, then the revision, instead of being a revision number 0 something, it becomes revision 1 or 1.0. And that's a plan. But of course, then during that next fiscal year, somebody,
Might add.
Steve or fire chief or somebody, is gonna come up with, there's something else we need.
Right.
And then during that year, you may add things to it.
Well,
And-
that's all I was trying to say, the financial picture can change, you can get,
Oh, yeah.
you can get grants, you can do all kinds of things that you didn't anticipate.
Correct.
And the plan's somewhat dynamic as you move through.
Get shot down by the voters
Yeah.
2 or 3
Yeah,
years ago.
Exactly.
It's mostly to point out that every line item in here is, well, very few line items in here have been agreed to by the select board saying, yes, we're gonna do that.
Exactly.
And so,
You're looking at an increase of over $500,000 over last year. So you have to go through, you have to figure out what is gonna stay and what's not gonna stay.
correct.
You can't
Yes.
just add that and have nobody have a problem with that.
Yes.
So let's continue with data collection and get Steve's input so he can go home.
Yes.
Yes, sure. So I started to type in PSC elevator, but it really sounds like it's a maintenance.
Yeah, but this wasn't for capital stuff, this was for other maintenance things like the,
You haven't gone through that yet.
but I just don't know what it's gonna cost.
Okay,
But I mean, you, at some point, I don't know how much a motor for costs or redoing all the cables.
Steve, can you look
Okay.
into when we will need to replace the elevator, so it is part of capital?
well, this is,
You know, there's a guy
this is
coming
also,
Friday, so.
Perfect.
this column over here, which used to just have a B for bond or an X for no funding plan yet, also has a place you can put it in A, saying, yeah, this is something we're gonna do, but it's just coming out of the annual budget. So, let's see, we had roads and bridges last time and Decatur. So at the last select board meeting, I was asked if this would be a capital expense that could come from that reserve fund, and I said that really the three trustees would have to vote on that. It's not obviously a yes, it's not obviously a no, and it's not the same as anything we voted on before, not exactly the same. And the board's decision was that there was money in the budget for it, so it's still listed here, but it's an A, and it doesn't show up over here at all, because it's an A saying it's supposed to come out of the annual budget. So we could do the same thing with this PSC elevator. I can just leave it like that for now.
You wanna do the transfer station one?
Transfer station.
That one's got a lot of stuff in it.
Okay. Maybe if you just want to look at this, I don't know if this is showing you enough, or you want me to change the,
Yeah, can we see the whole thing without the top?
yes. Why is this? So last time this mouse worked very well on my laptop here.
Do we have another mouse thing?
Wow. I'm moving the mouse, but that cursor is not moving. Oh, come on. Okay, so do you want to go, Steve, I don't know if you want to start at the top or you want to go to the new stuff at the bottom or what?
Yeah. So pretty much everything you see there's all been
Yes.
in the regular CIP. The only things we changed, we adjusted down line number 8. So the Bobcats, they were in there for $75,000. That was done before May. We had got actual prices on them. They're a lot lower with municipal bid through Bobcat than we had originally thought. So those are actual on the phone numbers for those skid steers. 3 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago, we got those numbers.
Yep.
So they were like in there for $65,000 and $75,000 each, so we're able to, obviously that's a significant reduction. Horizontal baler S&M that's in there for $200,000. So you can get a used baler for like $125, but that's without shipping. The problem arises is all the new balers are running 460 and 660 for power. We're only running
208.
240 or 220, so we're way, way lower, so that would, and that's already on three-phase, so we'd have to buy a transformer, I think, to make them work. The other thing is, I don't know if you can run 660 through the current conduit that's in the ground, so you're gonna have to do a lot of rewire to get them to even work. It's because the electric motors that run everything, we're running like a 10 or a 15 horsepower motor. All the electric motors on everything you get now are in the 40 to 50 horsepower range. The only good thing is all the newer, I say new balers, the one we're running now is almost 40 years old. The newer ones that you get are all auto tie, and they're all a lot longer, so you can run a lot more stuff through them so you'd be able to, instead of have two balers in there, have one.
And what do you do with the older one? Can you sell it? Can you?
Yeah, I don't know who's, I mean, it's 40-something years old, I don't know if there's gonna be much of a market for
There
it,
might
but
be spare parts or whatever. You know.
we have to go to machine shops and get our own parts custom made off of old parts for it. But that baler's running fine right now, that's not anything that would be, that we're like looking for. Like, that's why it's pushed out to like 2036.
Great.
And like I said, you get a decent one, probably 100 or so thousand. I don't know what it's gonna cost to put a transformer in. So I was including all of that extra cost in the same baler. And then all the last ones from the roll-off truck down are all attachments for the skid steers that we have currently. So like, we go to buy a new skid steer in 2 years, we need to buy a new snow plow for it the same year, because the snow plows are a lot more beat up than the skid steers themselves, so that the snow plows and stuff would be replaced when the skid steers get replaced. And then we have a material spreader in there already, that's just in there to replace the material spreader that we currently have. But that date can get pushed way out. The material spreader we have now isn't, I think it's only 3 or 4 years old. The skid steer extended lip grapple, that would need to be replaced when we replace the skid steer that has the grapple on it now.
Is that the S300 or which?
No,
Okay.
not the 570, the other one.
Okay.
And then the pickup broom is we already currently have one in there now. So the only new pieces of equipment that we added on that we don't currently have would be the concrete breaker, which is essentially just a big ram that would break the concrete up out back, and then we could use it in highway projects. And we could use it on highway projects with ledge on the side of the road. Then the skid steer snow blower, we don't currently have. That's a wish list item that would be split between the highway and here, or the highway and the transfer station.
So
We
these-
put that in because we have the new building, we have this building, and getting in and blowing out all the sidewalks and stuff and in and around all the buildings now, it would be helpful. But you'd be able to use it in the transfer station too.
So these prices that are listed are one half, and those items are also listed with the highway equipment.
Oh, that's one half each, got it.
Let's see, someplace. There's the snow blower
Good price.
and the concrete breaker, and that's, again, the half price.
Any questions on the transfer station one? I didn't change a lot on it.
Can you talk about, because highway department has a Bobcat and
We
then the
do.
transfer station, so.
When I get rid of one of the ones in the transfer station, my plan is to get rid of one of the highway department one and trade 2 in toward 1. I don't think we need 4.
So the highway department, there should be no Bobcat. in
There is no Bobcat on the highway department one, it's never been there. There's also no grader on the highway department one either. And we do have a grader.
So you would not need one if that one breaks, or?
I mean, we would, but you gotta get to the point where you think $250,000 for a new grader's worth it, or you think we should just hire it out the couple, 3 or 4 times a year to grade the roads.
Oh, okay.
Plus, we don't use it all, I mean, we use it, but the thing's in really good shape, it's not, it's not anywhere near, I mean, those things will last forever, I mean, the old Adams that we had before that one is still in town, running around doing grading work for somebody,
Hmm.
so.
Fair enough.
Any other questions on the transfer station one?
No?
We can do highway equipment then.
So is the, scroll up, okay. So is there, because I know you're having problems with the, what is it, the sprinkler system, is that in there someplace? I didn't-
That's a part of town buildings.
Oh, okay, all
And I got we had for the fire pump, I had the one report, John has it, I got the 3 prior years of that company could give me, and he has them, he's looking at
right.
them,
Uh,
to see how the pump's doing.
If we have time and you want to, I do have those, another spreadsheet of those. And the answer is not clear cut. Steve was concerned that from the previous year to the most recent, performance went down. So is this showing that it's continuing to go down? And the answer from the last 4 years is no. It's gone down, and then it's gone way up, and then it's gone down, and
Yeah,
so the answer is not clear, but there is, except at zero flow, there is a uniform progression downward in the max pressure.
So that's a leak?
Um,
No?
But it could be wear. But at the other test points, it's gone down and up and down. So it's a mixed.
Okay.
In fact, I'm not sure how it can vary so much. So,
Yeah, you an arrow? Yeah.
so,
All right, next.
so I'm sorry, you want to go to?
highway equipment.
Okay, and
So this one we didn't really change a lot on either. Everything's the same as it's been for years. The loader, tires and paint, we've been pushing off for the past couple of years because we don't really need tires for it yet. We've been waiting until we get to the 2025 line where we would go for a new front end loader, as close to it as we can.
Oh,
Because if we put new tires on it right before we get a new loader, that loader we currently have goes into the transfer station, and then that transfer station loader gets traded in toward
wow. Smart.
our thing, toward the new one. So that's why in the transfer station, there's money for a loader too. But if we just hold off on the tires as long as we can, then it'll go into the transfer station with brand new tires.
so, do you want me to change this now? Do you have-
Well, no, because if we pop a tire
Okay.
tomorrow, then
Okay.
we're gonna be looking for tires. We've just been leaving it and just, as it goes, it just
Push
gets
it out
pumped
a year each year.
Yeah. Everything else on there's the same as it's been. We didn't change anything. The only thing we added on, I think there's the zero steer for the cemetery, which is the small one that fits in between the stones. So 48 inch, it can't be any bigger than that. And then I did finally add back in the Skag turn mower with bagger. That was not on the list prior. We added that in, and that would replace the big mower that we currently have now that does all the fields. And then the next one's the roll-off truck down. The cold planer would be for a skid steer, and that's essentially just it's a pavement grinder. It's just a smaller version of what big paving companies use. If you click on it, you can see what it looks like. So inside that's a rotating drum of teeth
Inside here.
that grinds pavement, so you can help tie into driveways and things like that when we do a repave. Or you do inlays with them, grind out bad areas of hot top and replace it with,
They come in all kinds, a wide range of sizes and flow rates, so this is the model picked.
that's an item that's not on, that's new this year. That skid steer, snow blower, and concrete breaker, the split with the transfer stations. And then ground speed controls is 6 units for the 6 dump trucks, and that would, it's a spreader box that goes to the rear axle, and it controls the spreader and how, so if you want to only put out 250 pounds of material per lane mile, which is what the standard is, it will keep it constant, and you won't, it helps us reduce material cost, and
Where is it mounted?
right in the truck on the dashboard.
Oh, okay, I was gonna say, otherwise it's gonna catch a lot of
There's a
salt.
wire that runs to the
Yeah.
back, and it plugs into your hydraulic system, and then it runs to the back to the hydraulic motor that runs the spreader, and then there's another wire that goes down to the rear axle, so it'll adjust the chain, and it automatically stops when you stop. If you go 5 miles an hour, the chain will spin faster to put the material out that you need. The faster you go, the chain slows down.
So it'll pay for itself just by saving on some
With the
material.
way salt prices are, yeah, at some
Yeah,
point, it will
yeah.
definitely pay for itself. Inventory management program,
Yes.
which would be for all the town buildings.
Is there a subscription fee, or is that just one time purchase?
I've been like doing, there's a company that's been like, the $4,000 comes from a company that has been calling me ever since I started working here about wanting to get into it, and the company's called Dude Solutions. It's a fairly, they do a lot of towns all over the place, and it's for equipment maintenance, inventory, buildings.
So are we gonna do, what is it we're gonna inventory? All of the departments?
Well, it'd be all my 5 departments.
DPW.
We're gonna.
So I tried to see if the fire and police wanted to do it, but with their fire management system, they enter everything in with the state. All their miles and hours gets tracked through that, so they don't really need it.
So, but are we going to tag them as,
They didn't really have any interest in it, the other 2.
no, not them. Are we going to physically tag everything we inventory?
I would like to.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. That's what I'm trying to get at, though. Are we going to tag everything? Is it gonna be that much depth to taking inventory?
I would like to, but the first thing I think we need to start doing is every building needs to go in, and we need to keep track of what we're spending on maintenance for each individual building. And every piece of equipment I have needs to go in it. We need to keep track on what we're doing for maintenance on every single piece of equipment, and when the oil changes are and all that stuff.
I agree. All I'm trying to get at is how detailed is the inventory going to be? I mean, you can say, let's just do capital items, right? Anything that has a value over X, because I don't know, but that's all. I'm just asking, how deep are we gonna go?
You can make it
Because
this-
once
you
you
can
do
As much
that,
as you want, right?
Yeah, you can do it as much as you want. Because it's only gonna be me doing it for right now, I was just gonna try to do the buildings and stuff that has a motor.
okay, no, that's fine. I just wanted to know what the
Yeah.
depth of the inventory was gonna be.
And there are subscription fees for pretty much all
This-
of them.
That one has a subscription fee after you spend the initial.
Okay, so it's a chunk, and then there's something that's,
Yeah, but that budgeted fee after could be in your regular operating
Right.
budget.
perfect.
Then the GIS, GPS location
That'd be nice.
would be, we'd walk around and go to every road and every development in town and mark where the inlet and outlet of every single pipe we have is, and then you'd have a tablet So like with people coming and going and two guys leaving in the next couple of years and new guys coming in, I can hand them a tablet and say, you need to go do this pipe, check it, clean it, and then you can enter right in on the tablet what they did to it and what the condition of it was and what maintenance was performed, and then we'll have, you can click on every pipe and you can get a rundown of every single thing that was done to it.
As opposed to getting paid and seeing if he remembers where
Yeah.
that was put.
Which has worked well for a long time.
That's about
Yeah.
half the small towns in New Hampshire.
We've done
Somebody
something,
dies.
I've done something like this before, except when we didn't get a tablet, they gave us a drainage book, and it was about that thick, and it was on Google Maps, and they put the inlets and outlets on every single pipe you had in your patrol section. So you could see where every single one of them were. That way you could take a new employee and say, go check for drainage and clean drainage on this road, and they had the location of every one.
We would have to include a tablet on that cost then, as well as the information, right? Because we don't currently have tablets for people.
No, it would be one tablet, and my envision on that would be, we do the GIS location on all of it, and it's just entered into the computer that we have, and then in the operating budget, if I have any money left at the end of a year, we buy the tablet
Okay.
that way.
Perfect.
Because a tablet's not that much
No.
money.
Perfect.
And then you can see, our GIS website's on there, so you can see like what it is. So those are different,
Packages.
yeah, so these have subscription things too.
Yeah, it's $700 a year. And you need to look at what computer you can run it on.
Right.
Because over here's the hardware requirements, and your computer may not meet that.
So when I sprayed pesticides for the state, that's how I had the location of every well and public water supply in the state on a GIS layer that was on a tablet that was provided to me, so I knew where I could spray and where I couldn't.
So forth.
And it works well.
Great.
Any questions on the highway equipment one?
Nope.
Do you think there's any chance our roads and bridges are gonna get some help as the infrastructure bill passes?
I haven't even really looked at what's in it and what they have it in. It's gonna go to the state first before it comes anywhere near us.
Yeah, of course.
We can talk about the lead, so we got them sent out. I called EnviroVantage, because Warren and Pete both swore that it was 5%, and I couldn't find it in literature anywhere, and I wanted to find it. And I couldn't find it, so I called EnviroVantage, and those 5% limits are for if we scraped it in our house. But where we're not at our house and we're in the public, we have to do abatement the right way. And we can abate it ourselves if we take that class that I've signed us up for. That's 2 hours long, a lead and construction class. And we just need to wear the correct PPE and bag it and do an air monitoring every once in a while on the outside of the building to make sure the dust level isn't too high, and we can actually abate everything on there ourselves. And we can put the wood from the library siding into a roll-off, and we can bring it, there's a place in Northwood that takes it. And we can bring it all there in trash bags and in the dumpster. It's not a hard, I mean, the money's, we're gonna have to pay a fair amount probably to end up getting rid of it because it'll be hazardous waste, but it's a lot less than paying somebody to do it
When would you do it?
when no one's there. We'd have to, if we did the library, you'd have to legitimately probably close the library for at least 2 or 3 days until we could get it all off.
Okay. You could do it.
Then once it's all off, they can be there.
Yeah.
But like the hobo shed siding, once we do it, we can, that one's easy, because we just go over and wear the PPE and scrape the paint off and then paint
I was
over.
gonna say, you're just scraping.
That one's easy, and that one, we wouldn't generate a lot of waste, because it would just be the chips on the ground that we have to catch in a drop cloth.
So is that something you can get us in terms of a price for? Because I'm assuming the siding, you're gonna trash anyways. So we're gonna have to buy new siding,
Yes,
and I would also like us to consider putting some insulation in there before we put the siding back on. So there's gonna be
Insulation of
cost. What?
Insulation of where?
The walls, there's no insulation
I'm
in the
sorry, which
walls.
building, the library?
The library, the front part.
yeah.
So I don't know if that's something you can get us a price for, and then the library door, you don't necessarily wanna trash it, but can we,
No, that would be like a scrape and repaint job, because I believe that is the original door.
Yeah.
I knew those were gonna come back pretty high, because the home test kits you use on, you're supposed to rub them for 30 seconds, and they turn red, and a piece of the liquid dripped out on the library siding before I even touched it, and it looked like the siding was bleeding, so I kind of figured that one was gonna come back pretty high.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can, I can get a thing for siding, because we were planning if we did that and doing the siding and stuff ourselves, it's not hired out.
so if we choose to do this particular thing, probably maybe sometime when it's nicer weather, I would assume.
I wouldn't even attempt to do any of those 3 until at least the spring,
Yeah,
or
okay.
4, sorry, until at least the spring.
All right,
But we're gonna try to, I'm gonna try to do the class this winter, because I'm gonna sign up all the guys in the transfer station for it too, just because having lead training in the transfer station, to me, isn't a bad idea to have anyway, just in case.
is there a cost for the class, or the cost is based on the number of people that attend?
It's like $200 for the class, and I can have as many people go as I want. And EnviroVantage, we can go right to EnviroVantage in Epping, where they can come right to us, and they're
Okay,
right at the end of 155, so it's not
okay. And it's, how many hours, you said?
too.
Good.
And then that lead abatement was, to get those numbers in that report, that ended up being $500. I paid for that out of the highway equipment, or the highway department's budget.
Well, it should probably come out of someplace else, not highway.
He doesn't have a buildings budget yet.
Yeah, but he
Yeah,
does.
one.
He has government buildings budget. He should
Yeah.
probably have it come
Uh-huh.
out of there. Because it's for government buildings, not for the highway department, so.
I've been trying to,
Has Joanne paid it yet?
no,
All right,
no,
so,
I was gonna pay it, I haven't actually gotten the bill yet. But I've been trying my hardest to be careful with that whole government buildings budget, because there's $14,000 worth of utilities that are gonna come out of it that are not budgeted. And we're already over the heat and electricity budget for that budget because of the new building.
But we should take it out of there, because that's where it comes from, and then
Yeah.
should we add to the budget, or what are we doing that piece?
well, we just,
Elsewhere.
You what?
You could move some money from elsewhere.
I've just
Right.
been trying,
That would
I've been
still-
trying to be conservative with that budget because of,
oh, the expense is the expense.
Right.
So I think that's more of a philosophy. I personally would rather charge it to where it's supposed to be.
okay.
And then we can take note of, you know, if it's over,
Yeah, just let us know.
yeah, so, and it sounds like it is gonna be over, so I don't like moving money around after the fact, because then
Okay.
you lose sight of how much things cost, and so,
Great.
all right, that's good. Anything else?
Or then we pick on the highway department for being really expensive.
Well,
Unfairly.
no, I think we've told the department heads enough times that if there's a reason why they're over, that's fine,
Yeah.
but they need to come and explain to us.
Right.
They shouldn't at the end of the fiscal year come and say, oh my goodness, I'm over.
Yeah.
No, they should explain when they find out what the expense is.
I still think that tool shed with lead abatement probably can go way down if we're gonna do it, scrape it ourselves.
This was based on hiring someone.
Yeah, I think you probably drop it. What I do think that we probably need to do, though, if you're gonna do, is whenever you drop it, add it to the library siding. Because of
Yeah, right now, they use,
insulation work and stuff like that. Because my personal opinion with that would be to take the sheathing off the outside and spray foam it instead of putting pink stuff in it, because spray foam fills the cavities better and I think gives you a better product.
Whatever's better.
you're talking about the historic building, the schoolhouse.
Yeah,
Um, So the first edition that was put on the schoolhouse, that was built before 1978 also. That was 74.
But that's not, the schoolhouse part, there's rotting underneath
the underneath the paint, you can take your finger and poke it all the way through it.
No, I'm just
There's
bringing up,
nothing left of the clapboards at all.
Are you thinking
I was just bringing up the question of lead paint.
about yeah.
Well, I mean, if we're gonna get rid of it on one part of it, you should probably try to get rid of it on
So
all of it.
the second and third editions were after 1978 when they stopped
Right, using lead.
lead in paint, house paint.
So can you, maybe Steve on that, so when you look at the library, you get the old section out front, then the section that's just to the left, where the children's stuff is, Can you do your
First edition.
home test on that, just to see
Yeah,
what it is?
I have another 2 kits still in the transfer
Yeah,
station.
so we can do that one too, but as far as you know, the siding underneath that section seems to be fine.
I haven't looked, so.
Okay, so
I
can you look at that?
the only reason I know the old schoolhouse is the light that was over the main door that came into it it broke, it was junk, and they asked us to replace it, so we went up and replaced it.
There's nothing to
And
attach it
Pete
to.
went up there to replace it and was like trying to find something solid to put the new light on, and it wasn't. We struggled to find a decent,
Okay.
to get it attached to. It's attached now and it works, and it's working good, but
Okay,
it wasn't, and that's how we knew, he was the one that told me that it was starting to.
okay. And so is it just the siding? Is it the fascia boards or
It's everything,
everything?
everything on that needs to be
Okay.
done.
So
All
I guess if you can find out a price for doing regular clapboards,
Yeah, I don't think
not the
that,
pine ones, the cedar ones?
Then are we gonna look around for some grant money for that, because we're going to be replacing it properly?
Well, yeah, you could do that too.
Yeah,
You could
because
do
if
moose
you're gonna-
plate if you want.
If you're gonna spend that much money, you should,
The library is applying to moose plate for some structural stuff for the
Right.
inside, so the thing is, you'd be competing against that.
well, yeah, I guess it depends on if you do it the same year, but maybe there's other things, because you're trying to restore the historical nature, which that's where the money comes from.
Yeah, well, you can also do L-chip if you wanted
Yeah,
to.
exactly.
So we'd have to explore that. Because I think if we put it back the way it kind of was,
Right,
with cedar siding and, so it looks illuminating versus vinyl siding,
I
'cause-
don't think vinyls.
yeah, I don't like vinyl either, but, but if you can get some assistance with putting it back the way it was
right,
Yeah.
originally, kind
because
of.
that's what they want us to do, so.
Yeah.
And those windows are single pane windows.
So you're trying to get us in for a penny, in for a pound, John?
The architect that the library hired recommended replacing the windows because they were just single pane windows.
Aren't they doing that with their internal project? No, they're not. That's the problem with them doing their own thing. They cannot get coordinated with all this other stuff that we're doing. And it's like a disconnect. So, I don't know, I'm not happy about it. Can't do anything about it, but still doesn't mean I'm not happy
I
about it.
mean, like so Saturday I was in there because the furnace in the old schoolhouse stopped working. So we had an emergency call for the furnace in there on Saturday. So that was 3 hours of fun. All because somehow water got in it. There was water in the exhaust fan.
Really?
And then some pressure switch. So they told me a half hour before they were done for the day that it was kind of cold in there and they didn't think the furnace was working, so.
Glad you could fix it before the pipes froze.
Yeah,
That would have been even worse. Thank you,
but I mean, it got fixed, so it's running fine now.
thank you.
Anything else in here?
I didn't add anything new into it. The only thing I added was the stairs going up the side, because, I mean, there's pieces falling off of that. Those red stairs are pretty,
Yep.
I don't like walking up them.
I went back and looked because the AECM had in their cost estimate replacing those.
Yeah,
And when I went back to the date that they came up with their estimate, and put that date in with their estimate, it came out $7 less than Steve's
okay.
estimate of
That's pretty
$8,000.
impressive, huh?
Well, that's because I figured out how much wood you needed and knew what wood costs, and
That's impressive.
gave you your educated guess without getting a quote.
Actually, they were planning on metal.
Oh. Yeah.
The cost was for metal stairs.
Okay. Anything else? You did everything else for you, right, Steve?
Yeah,
All right.
great.
Scroll to the top, Mr. John. Thank you.
So on all of these other things that the board may want to consider changing, there's this end-of-year margin. And for town buildings right now, it's set at 10%. So if in a given year you were going to spend $100,000, this would try to make sure you end the year with at least $10,000 left over.
Okay.
200,000, I would make sure it was least. If you were going to spend just 50,000, it would try to make sure that the 10% would be 5, except the lower limit has been set at 10,000
There you go.
with an upper limit at 50. That's the same on all of these, and so that's another input that the board may want to consider is
Okay.
what do they really want for each of these funds.
Okay.
And with things that are happening in the near term, some of these annual cost increases are probably not adequate. Some of these others, we have 2 or 2.5%.
Yeah, that's not
And
adequate.
with recent history, we haven't seen anything like that recently.
I also went to go get paint yesterday, 2 days ago, and the shelves were empty. Like, not empty, but there's like whole areas of emptiness because chemicals are just not.
And if you can find it, if you recall buying paint for $24.99.
Yeah, no,
That
no.
sort of thing, it's like
The
74.
little thing was $35, it was
72.
this big, yeah, it's crazy, so. We're gonna have to be very careful about those numbers, at least for now.
Well, it's production and transportation, those two things together.
Well, it's also the petrochemicals in Texas during that storm. That's what they put in all these different things. They just don't exist right now.
So there's only a few of these where I've done some research on. The highway equipment, I did look at producer price index for construction equipment. And over the last 10 years, it has averaged actually a little less than 2%. But that's the producer prices, not what they charge you.
Right.
And some of these others, I mean, like fire ponds and cisterns, I have no clue.
So I can tell you, like, the dumpsters we order, for new dumpsters, those have, because of the new one that we just bought last year, I got an email from them saying that, they'll email me like a couple times a year saying the prices are about to go up because of steel. So they'll give me, like, if you want to lock in at this price now, order it now. But I think their prices have gone up like 10 or 12% just in steel for a dumpster in the last year and a half.
For almost every one of those, or most of those Bobcat attachments, the skid steer attachments, they had a a price added on for the cost of steel.
Oh, okay.
Like a surcharge?
A surcharge. The most expensive, there was one of them where the surcharge was $3,000. So those are in there.
And the other thing not to know is, these price increases, are they something that's temporary, or is it ongoing?
I think it
It's hard to
depends.
know.
You can't know.
It's hard to know.
A lot of people say once it goes up, it never goes down, which is true in some cases, but some things are just, like plywood went down after a while.
The plywood went way up
It's a
and
supply
went way
issue.
down.
Right, so I think some of the prices will, that paint, those things.
The price of recycled metal's gone through the roof.
Right,
Like aluminum cans, we just sold 3 weeks ago for 75 cents a pound. If I'd have held on to them for another 3 weeks, we would've gotten 85 cents a pound. But in tin cans, we were getting $2.75 a gross ton, which a year ago we were getting 85. So
big difference.
all the metals, recycling wise, have gone through the roof.
Yeah.
Because there's not enough,
Yeah.
there's not enough raw material out there for anything.
All right. So we have anything else from Steve? That's all of them?
Anything we're missing, Steve?
No.
I think that's all.
So, who's next? We've got fire equipment. What else? Anything else?
Fire equipment, ponds and cisterns, the library building, library capital reserve fund, recreation, and then accrued benefits revaluation. The land acquisition is just as a dummy purchase.
Well, accrued benefits, we'll get more information when Andy does his presentation next time. Reevaluation, the same thing. We'll get an idea, because we know how much is in there and how much it costs, but we're not using that particular firm again. So we can get an idea in terms of how much we need to
How do
pay.
you feel about that?
What?
Um,
You want to know what I really feel
No,
about that?
I don't.
Okay.
I would support Scott's sentiments.
Yeah.
I met with Scott yesterday.
For the revaluation, this is a spreadsheet that Julie did.
Yep.
And it shows the 4 bids.
Yep.
And we went with this one.
Yep.
But I've put them in at 50,000 because that's more in line with it. There were 2 of them. 50,000 is essentially the median. And there were 2 of them that were at 50,000.
So, yeah, what is the cost go out in 2026 when we have to do it again? Is that someplace?
So 50,000
So it's
becomes
55.
55,
All right.
becomes about 61, and then 67.
Okay. But it gives us an idea in terms of what we need to shoot for, so. The other thing is, and
and-
I don't know. if
And this
Andy-
shows how much you need to set aside.
Okay. I don't know, if Andy, if you've got some more information. Is the state doing anything about the limits for people who had exemptions on their property? Specifically that lady you were telling us about, that, you know, her, I don't know, is the state gonna move those particular things so we can?
I don't believe so, no, and I met with Scott Marsh yesterday about that we actually reviewed the elderly exemptions we have. I had done a little research as to where Lee is, and actually, you've been very generous. Lee is in the top 5 or the top 10 for each of the categories for size of the credit we offer and the income limits we have. We have 52 people that get the elderly exemption right now. Probably about half of those people had not had any tax bill prior to this year, and now have a tax bill. And I've got I didn't bring it this evening, I have the actual breakdown of who's paying taxes, and there were a few extremes.
Did the RSA's allow us to change those particular limits, or are they set by the state?
No, there's a guideline for what you can do, but you can certainly change those limits. There were a few outliers when you look at all the other towns. Gillington comes to mind, which I believe for the 80-plus category allows us $750,000 or $800,000 credit. And,
Okay.
very high income as well. There's 1 or 2 other towns that are at the 750 or 800,000 or 900,000
But we're already at the top 5 or 10%, like, we've already really gone above and beyond.
You are at the top of the tier for the most part,
Yeah.
and it's Lee, the top towns above you are like Portsmouth, Nashua,
Right,
Newington.
So-
And
Oh,
then
so are we ahead of Durham? I always like to compete.
you are actually have a chart that I made that I can email you. It shows exactly where we are.
But I think one of the things, hopefully, can we put it on the agenda for the next meeting, is to discuss those particular things?
yeah.
Yep.
Because I don't mind being fifth, but I think it would be the right thing to do for us to revisit that and see if we can do anything for these people.
I think there's a balance between making sure we do anything for anyone who's struggling and be
Yeah.
aware, but also when you're in the top 5%, maybe you have to think about, is that the best thing for everyone in the community if a small group of people aren't paying taxes at
That's
all?
why I need more information, so.
We've actually had planned to bring that to you and have a couple of different.
Great.
Thank you.
So who do we want to have next? I'd rather have the police department if we could, they're the next, fire department, if we could, they're the next big one.
Equipment and
The
systems.
fire department's the next big one, right?
Yeah,
I mean, I really think that's the one we should go to next.
all right.
Yep.
So let's see if
Because
we
we
can.
also had some safety issues
Yeah.
in some of those. so-
Yep.
And Scott should have, he's in the process of getting an estimate for fire suppression and sprinkler in this building.
Great.
Yeah, exactly, and that's a big one, so.
He got about a 3-part answer in his discussions with the state fire marshal's office about what was required for this building. Because it was classified as a business building in 2002, when it was first
Okay.
planned, it did not require fire suppression.
Business, huh?
The fire marshal further commented that there is no fire suppression requirement for fire and police buildings, but that we might have changed the use when we started using these rooms upstairs and downstairs as we do, but he couldn't ascertain from the plan. And there's some controversy over whether they're accessory rooms or assembly rooms. And if they're accessory rooms, you don't need fire suppression, and if they're assembly rooms, you do. The one thing that we came away with is that we are in clear violation with
You're
the
24 hours a
sleeping
day.
quarters.
Absolutely.
And Scott and the police chief are working to come to you, and I believe they're talking with Steve as well, to come back to you with a plan for using the gym or part of the gym as a bunk room that is compliant with 2 means of egress and the ability to possibly divide rooms up, so if you have
Great.
multi-gender fire people, you don't have them all in the same room.
I love it.
Yeah, we just spent 45 minutes before this meeting over there,
Oh, great.
So
looking at it.
can we see if we can get Chief Nemeth in, 2 weeks? Well, maybe not 2 weeks.
The day before Thanksgiving, no.
Maybe
Sorry, I'm just gonna know that one.
3 weeks.
Yeah, that sounds good.
So
Maybe on the 1st of December at 5 o'clock?
Yeah.
so that would be the week after Thanksgiving on Wednesday at
Yeah.
5?
Yeah,
Yeah. I was gonna go the day before Thanksgiving, but Katrin, put it
I'm gonna just
on that one.
say,
So
not
the
if I'm
first at
making the
5.
whole meal.
I have to make pies.
I literally make every single thing we eat at Thanksgiving, and no. All right, so December 1st at 5.
Does that work for you, Mr. John?
Katrin, what did it
That's
say?
okay.
December 1st,
Yes.
At 5 o'clock.
5 o'clock, okay.
So, and if you can let us know if the chief can make it or not.
Yep,
if you-
I will contact him tomorrow.
If not, will we go through and discuss the buildings and things like that?
Well, we should probably keep the meeting. If Nemeth can't do it, then,
We can work on things we have to work on.
yeah, 'cause we can go through and review those other things and maybe make some decisions on
Get his
those.
hockey schedule.
I'll stop adding stuff to the buildings.
Anything else?
Yes, stop adding stuff to the buildings. Just tell the buildings that they're done.
As long as we don't keep finding more.
Can I bring up a topic with the board? They instructed me to contact the property owner on Route 4, and it appears that I was given information that was not exactly correct.
Okay.
So, the Conservation Commission had heard about it, but had not even had a discussion about it. They are not in favor of it. And based on the information that Karen Andy sent us,
Yeah,
it sounds like the part that we would be concerned about is already protected by
Correct.
based in the ordinances.
Yep.
So if the board is okay with it, I would like to convey that to
yes,
the property owner and say that, thank you, but no thank you.
yes.
So, we all okay with that?
She hasn't actually listed it that I can see. I've been checking every day to see if she's listed it with a price.
She was waiting to see if the
Okay.
town was interested, because she'd rather have the town have it than somebody
Now
else.
she- Now she'll know, so she can.
Now
go
she'll
for it.
know.
Makes sense.
So,
And
but
would-
yeah, that was the consensus, and also just to let you know, the Conservation Commission did have a conversation about it, and they're not in favor of the town acquiring it at this particular time. So, usually
Judging,
look to them in terms of
yeah,
what to do, and,
I think that was a very good choice.
good, I have one less thing to do.
All right, yay. All right,
Oh, can I bring up something else?
he's just having
For
fun
the
now.
meeting, hey, I got lots of stuff to do. One of the things, and this is, Steve's gonna hate me, but one of the things the ABC would like Mr. Bullock to check into is they would like to find out in terms of the cost to get you an assistant to do the administrative stuff. They explored, because they knew that part of Joanne's assistant's Liz,
Mhm.
and they said, well, then Liz could maybe help him out half-time. Well, we said, no, she's already helping out in the town clerk's office,
Right,
and you can only spread her so thin.
right.
So they would like to know how much that cost would be. Maybe that's an Andy and Steve
Yeah, I
thing.
can certainly help you with that.
For getting somebody to do those kinds of things. Specifically, one of the things you mentioned in terms of getting money out of the transfer station, in terms of buying the coupons, that's something that assistant can do that you don't have to do.
Absolutely.
Because in my opinion, we're paying you way too much money to do accounting for
All that
type stuff, so.
And there's not enough hours in the week, Steve is here all
Yeah.
the time, and you can't
So-
work that many hours.
If the ABC is making the request, you can say, heck no, we're not gonna do it, but
Right.
they're asking in terms of what that cost would be, because they would like to recommend that to the board, and I think the board was.
Well, we
thinking about
discussed it
that.
at the last
Yeah.
ABC meeting, so yes, absolutely.
Absolutely.
I think I've got some of those numbers already, so.
So somebody part-time or something, I don't know
Yeah.
if that's even possible these days, we have hard enough time finding people to work, so.
If you look at the municipal association classifieds right now, pretty much everybody in the state is advertising for some sort of transfer station employee.
Durham just posted 3 police officer jobs today.
Wow.
Who did?
Durham,
Oh, yeah?
you know, every transfer station in the state's looking for help.
But assistant job is different than transfer station.
Yeah,
You're-
and Larry is now on his, he's not cooking as much now because it's
Oh,
going
yeah.
into winter, so he's working more hours. The Allen Bodett kid, the bigger,
Oh, they like that kid.
they like him.
See, that's-
The residents like him because he's personal and
Yeah.
he helps them get their trash out of their car and he talks to them and
Great.
he's
Well,
No,
also,
great.
if it's in Lee, maybe there's somebody in town that's been looking for a part-time job. They just have to commute 20, 30 minutes, and
Yeah.
that might be something that would be interesting.
If you advertise at mother's hours too, that
Well, I
kind of
think
thing.
I think,
It's really
you know,
helpful.
Well, I would advertise it as for mother's hours, is they can make their own hours as long as.
Yeah,
they can
exactly.
sign.
I think
It's great.
absolutely what we want to do is get somebody from Lee.
That would be excellent.
It would be, well, somebody close. League would be
Yeah.
great, but somebody that's close,
Yeah.
because, you know, that would be good, so.
Okay, are we good?
I think so, unless I can think of something else to
No,
talk about.
don't think.
Meeting adjourned.
Thank you.
So
I'm just kidding. I already made dinner. It's good. Everybody's